Hello, I'm Crystal Meach with Tao of the Heart, and today I have a special guest, Renee DeConing from Mustard Seed Consulting. And I just want to start by asking her how you came up with the name Mustard Seed Consulting.
Hi, Crystal. Thank you so much. And what a great question. A lot of business owners say the Koning and Partners or Renee, Coach Renee, or something like that. I just didn't want to do that, and I racked my brain for something that was going to be meaningful, not just to me, but also to my potential clients. And there's a biblical reference about faith the size of a mustard seed. Now, you would probably know as a business owner, when you step out to own your own business, you have to have that faith to take that first step. So for me, the symbolism was that faith the size of a mustard seed grows into a giant bush. So for me, the small step into my business became what it is today. And because I'm a profitability coach, I also can do that for your business or other small, medium-sized businesses, help them grow their business from being tiny to the size that fits them. Because we don't all really want to be tiny. So, sometimes we do want to be a little bit bigger.
Yeah, and so would you say that you walk the talk when it comes to mustard seed, like having the faith of a mustard seed?
You know, um, I am a Christian, and I don't want to push that down anybody's throat, but I am open about my faith, and I do hope that I walk the talk of faith. And well, it's 8 years, 9 years, and I'm still here. So that I've yeah, since I started my business, and it's grown, and the scope has grown from really just doing 1099 work for other people to now firmly being my business, and I'm in charge of my own destiny, which means if you also have faith, I have faith that God leads me in the direction He wants me to go.
Awesome. So, could you talk a little bit more about that? Like some of the challenges that you went through when you started this? Because you said 8 to 9 years. I mean, coming over
Yes,
the hump of the first couple years. So, I think everyone would love
yeah.
to know more.
So, and I'm not going to tell you it's easy because it's not. Um, I come from a corporate background, and as you can hear from my accent, I am not from the US. I'm originally from South Africa, and I started working for a large oil company in South Africa, and then with them moved to the UK for a couple of years, and then to the Chicagoland area. And around 2015, I took a package, and my specialty was marketing strategy and marketing research. So to set up shop as a marketing strategist, market researcher, that would have been a natural step forward. Of course, that's not the step I took. I um, I met up with somebody who does leadership development, and I was still very undecided what I was going to do. And I started. I said, "Okay, sure, I can facilitate. I can do some of this." And our agreement was that he would do most of the sales. I would facilitate the programs, not realizing that I would have to learn a heck of a lot of information in a very short period of time. I did it. And to this day, I still help Jeff. He's the owner of LMI Chicago. I help him with facilitating classes, and I just absolutely love it. It's leadership development. It really helps businesses, individuals, and business owners with those soft skills that have, when you're a business owner and you're really good at what you do. Maybe you're a good landscaper, maybe you're a good um, a manufacturer of, I don't know, potting plants, or plant pots, um, whatever it is, but maybe you're not all that good at leading people, then those are the skills that you'll be looking for. Um, but your question was, what were my hurdles? Well, so I started really small, and I really am a little bit of a accidental entrepreneur, because I liked it so much to be my own boss that I started expanding my offers. I'm an executive coach and I'm a profitability coach, and I focus primarily on those areas while I also do the leadership development. But it is a building process. It's a step by step process. It's not a giant leap and suddenly you're a successful business person. It takes it takes dedication, it takes discipline, and it takes a plan and a goal. When I started, I had none of that. And at some point, I realized, well, if I want to put food on my table, I'm going to have a plan in place, set my goal, have my plans in place, and then step by step achieve my plans and review those plans on a regular basis, because life changes. Nobody I know planned for COVID in 2020, but it happened, so we had to change our plans. So I hope that answers your question.
Oh, for sure. And I think it's interesting how you talk about it started out with how do I just put food on my table to
Right.
then how do I expand and add more services and
Absolutely.
your mindset shift in that. Like, um, could you talk a little bit more about that? Like um, some of the hurdles that you successfully went over
Yeah.
in.
That is such a good question, Crystal, because I had still had the mindset of being an employee. I was reliant on somebody else at the beginning to make sure that I had work. Jeff did the selling, I did the facilitation. But more and more, I realized that if I wanted to be the master or mistress, if you want to be specific or gender specific, then I had to I had to take ownership of being an owner, having my own business. I couldn't be the person who was just dangling off of somebody else's business, and it certainly took a mind shift. And I do credit some specific incidents with my mind shift. Um, I did my certified professional coaching certification through an organization called IPEC. My perspective on my whole world shifted because it just broadened to me so much of myself that I was discovering in the process of discovering how to be a good coach. And it also gave me the confidence to set out on my own. Also, as time went by, my interests went into the coaching, consulting side, and Jeff's interests stayed primarily on the leadership development side. So there was a natural split for us at some point where my desire was to be more hands-on with one-on-one clients, business owners, really make a difference in their lives by helping them be more successful, more profitable in the work that they did.
Yeah, and it's interesting how you talk about, I guess I'm thinking of the word accountability is a huge, when I think of like an executive consultant, I really think of like accountability, someone that really teaches or grinds that in. Could you maybe
Right.
speak to that?
Yes, and again, I connect that personally with myself because in the beginning I didn't take ownership of being a business owner. And I like the word ownership more than accountability,
Okay.
because accountability feels like you've got to be accountable to somebody else. But when you take ownership, it's an internal attitude shift, that it's my it's my reputation that's on the line when I do whatever I do, the work that I put out there, and it's not somebody else holding me accountable. So it did take me a while to get to that point of ownership, and it's something that I work with my clients on. I have a story of somebody I coached a couple of years ago. And when I first met him, he introduced himself as the acting CEO of the company. And I said to him, "Oh, are you? If you're the acting CEO, is are you shifting out of the company and somebody else is going to come in permanently?" And he said to me, "No, I it was my dad's company. My dad has decided to retire, and I'm now taking over from him." And he was calling himself the acting CEO. And I said, "Well, if your dad's no longer involved and you're the one whose neck is on the line to keep this business going, you're not the acting CEO. You are the CEO." And I could just see the light bulbs go on for him, because it made a huge difference in the way that he showed up, in his confidence levels, in his attitude towards his people, and the way that he became a leader of the organization, as opposed to being as in a subservient role. Um, so those are some of the things that I help my clients recognize, because I've gone through it. Um, so I don't know if that answers your question.
Yeah, and my brain is just like kind of churning and I'm thinking about like you said like acting CEO and I think of like the word entitlement, like titles
Yeah,
and
right.
how they influence how you create in this reality, I guess might be a way to say it.
Yeah, and it's very one of the things that I've recognized in business is, having come from a large global corporate organization, a managerial role in that organization would be similar to a vice president. They have meaning, but they also don't. It's something that you really have to own once again. If you want to show up as the director or the VP or the owner, you've got to show up as the director or the VP or the owner. There's a quotation that Nelson Mandela used in his inaugurational speech, where he says, if you let your light shine, you give others permission to let their light shine. So playing small doesn't do anybody any good if you're capable and able to achieve so much more. And we all are capable of achieving more than we think we can.
Sure. And again, just thinking about like titles, like it doesn't cost much for a company to change a title or but yet that title serves in so many different ways because of how people view it, their perception of it, and then the person who has to take on that role and how they present themselves and their
Yeah,
perception.
yeah. And it gives, a title certainly gives a level of credibility to the role and authority that comes with the title. But trust and leadership, those are the things that have to be earned. Even if you have the title and you're not a good leader, it's still going to just not, you're just not going to be a successful leader. Or you're going to be a leader that people learn from, but in the wrong way. Either they're going to become horrible leaders too, or they learn and say, I never want to be like that person. I always joke that everybody I've ever worked for, I've learned something from, even those people who were not good leaders, because it gave me an example that I did not want to emulate.
Yeah, and that's so interesting. You talk about trust. And could you maybe speak more to first, it seems like there's like the inner game that you really need to know before you can truly lead someone or an organization.
Yeah, yeah.
So maybe you could speak to that.
Oh, very definitely. If we as in within ourselves do not have the right attitudes, or I don't want to call it right, because we're all different, right? All our attitudes might be different, but our value systems, our attitudes, our behaviors, our habits, it sort of defines how we show up, but it truly comes from within and from who we are. And corporate, specifically in a business environment today, I'm not so sure about right now, but when I was in big corporate, there was an expectation that you showed up with a facade. You couldn't come to work with your exposing all your emotions and your true self. Um, I think that is slowly shifting, and more and more businesses are recognizing that the whole person comes to work and the whole person goes home. And that's another thing that I teach, is that to make sure that you have that balance in your life, so that you're not just all about work, or where you when you go to work, that you forget that you're also a spouse, a father, a grandfather, somebody's child. You are the whole package. And for that reason, also as a leader, or a business owner, to recognize that in your people, that if something is going on at home, they might not be able to come to work in a way and fully give 100%, because it's going to be in the back of your mind. And if something goes wrong at work, you might be going home with it being in the back of your mind, and you might be grumbly and grouchy, and that does nobody any good. So the balance and the how you show up and your internal attitude is hugely important, to live that balanced type of life.
Do you feel like with the pandemic now, businesses have really switched? Like they're more so willing to have that balance of the people, or
Yes, I'm seeing that. I do work with manufacturers, contractors. It's hard for them to have that complete work-life balance, where you can sometimes work from home, because you really cannot manufacture something from your house when the facility is some other place. You physically have to be there.
Mhm.
But I do see that there is a greater level of empathy, amongst leadership, towards their employees, and a desire amongst leaders uh, to give their employees grace. If something is going on in their lives, to show them empathy and to have them, take some time off, or come in for half a day if you have somebody at home that you need to care for. The world's not going to end. Um, and there's a less, I think, strict rule following of a 9 to 5. I just think of my son. He works for a company where they're also a global company, and their head office is on the West Coast, and he's here in Chicago. So they really only start working around 11 a.m. our time. So he'll sleep until 10 and then work from 11 until 7 or 8 p.m. at night. And by that time, I'm done. But so, there's a lot more flexibility as well than there was before. And with Zoom and all the electronics and digital tools at our disposal, what a joy. We don't have to be sitting right in front of each other to have a meeting now. We can do this.
Yeah, and I think it expands, all the people that you can connect with as
Yes.
compared to before. I mean, you
Yeah.
probably have clients all over, not just in your community, right?
Absolutely. Yes. I'm working with a company now. Their head office is in the UK. Um, Not surprisingly, another manufacturing company, but they're a large manufacturer that has how shall I call it, mother company that has bought up smaller manufacturers in the US and the UK. And you make it work, you know, and they make it work. And I did it when I worked for BP. It was just, if there was a need for an evening meeting, latest I ever did, I think, was 10 or 11 p.m. You just do it. Go home, make dinner, watch some TV, and then you go to your meeting. That's just how you did it, you know.
Hmm. Do you feel like with those global meetings the global companies, like you're catering to them like all day because so much is going on? I mean, I have a couple
That's a
friends like
good
that are
question.
in human resources, and like it
Yeah.
seems like they're getting up at 1 in the morning for something in India, and it'll be like
I
they're
think
in
some
this
companies
flow.
perhaps are like that.
Mhm.
I did not experience that. I always felt that there was a lot of understanding that, when you leave the office, you have a home life. Could it be different in other companies? I'm sure, especially if you are working here. With us being more on the western side of the world, and if you're working with people in Australia, New Zealand, India, China, the time difference is horrendous, and it's very hard to find the right window for when to arrange meetings. But it also created some urgency in those meetings, because you knew you had only a small window when everybody was awake at the same time, and you had to get the work done in that time. um, and and you do, you squeeze everything into that hour, and then everybody goes away and does their own thing in their own time. So it actually, in some cases, increases efficiency rather than decreases efficiency. One of the things I used to enjoy was, because the US is 8 hours behind the UK, I would wake up in the morning and I'd have a string of emails that went back and forth and back and forth and back and forth while I was still happily sleeping. And by the time I got to read them, the whole story was already resolved. I didn't have to do anything.
The joy
Yeah.
of time. Just let it
Yes.
work
Absolutely.
itself out.
Yes. Yes.
Could you walk through like I've met a lot of I actually had an executive coach once, but could you walk through like what your process is? Like usually when you onboard someone, like
Sure.
what happens?
So it depends what the program is. So if it's one-on-one coaching, if it's leadership or executive coaching, which is the most, uh, let me just say the word, the most intimate type of coaching, because you're not only dealing with the person in their business environment, you're dealing with them as a whole person. I really do start right there. I start, tell me about your family. Tell me about where you live. Tell me what you like to do in your free time. What gives you joy? What makes you angry? Uh, what do you see your life like in 3 years' time? So I do dive a little bit deeper into the person, and then I have them set the agenda. I don't have an agenda when I coach um, on one-on-one executive and leadership coaching. I coach people, meet them where they are and coach them to where they want to go. I'm the support and the cheerleader, and I know what questions to ask, because if you're a coach and you're not asking questions, then you're not a coach.
Sure.
Because it's not my answers, right? You know what your answers are to your problems already. We just have to tease it out of you for you to acknowledge it. And sometimes it takes time, or sometimes it happens in a split second. I remember somebody I was coaching who was he was I was coaching him to take on a higher level of responsibility in his organization for a promotion, basically. And he became very ill in that time. And to the extent that he didn't know at some point whether he was going to live or die. And after he got better and healed, he said, well, I want to start the coaching again. I said, absolutely, let's do that. And the very first session we had, I said to him, we were talking, and I could hear his heart was just not in this conversation. And I said to him, I won't use his name. Let's say his name's Pete. I said, Pete, what do you really want? And he burst into tears. And he said, I want to spend time with my wife, and I want to spend time with my family. And I asked him, so what are the implications then on you pursuing this promotion? And he said, I'm going to have to think about that. And that was the last session we had. And I saw that as a success, because he had come to a point in his own mind that he knew what it is that was really important to him. And the promotion wasn't. And he actually did get the promotion on top of it all.
See, that's so important. And I think that's like one of the keys here as we're leading up in this conversation is, as a coach, coming back to what does this person really want? Because as much as you have a facade up there, whether you're in corporate or you have your own business, it's going to come crashing down.
That is so true. And and some people are very good at keeping up the facade, and some people just, I'm not here to play games. This is an hour out of my life every week. If I'm not taking advantage of this time, I'm wasting this time. So to be disingenuous or not honest about who I am and what I want, it's not worth that. If you have a coach and you're not honest with your coach, don't have a coach. It really is as simple as that. Or be prepared to be caught out by your coach, because your coach will ask you a question that will get you into tears and will break through that barrier for sure.
Yeah, and I'm just thinking of like, I think we all go through that where it's like, hey, I'm going to go to college and I think I want to be this. And then we get into that career and it's like, maybe this
Yes,
isn't what I wanted.
absolutely.
And then
Yes.
how do people make that switch? I mean, especially when you're a leader. I know for me,
Yeah.
I had a pretty big team at the time that I had that crash. So maybe you can speak to that, like when
And
your
well
coach calls
done
you
for
out.
you. Well done to you that you recognized that you were crashing and that you didn't want to do that anymore. Because sometimes we will continue to keep up that facade. Um, and then we can't figure out why we're not truly happy. And I don't mean happy in the artificial sense, I mean the joy that comes from being who you are. And if you feel like you're in a position or in a role where you're just not getting or feeling the joy, it is so draining, and people do there's definitely burnout and overwhelm. And if you know the the old saying of, if you find a job that you love, you'll never work a day in your life. And that is true. If you don't have the passion for what you're doing, you're not going to show up your best self, and it's going to drain your energy. And that makes me think of something else. I had this conversation with somebody a while ago. He was given the opportunity for promotion, with quite substantially more with quite substantial responsibility, but not an increase in salary, or basically just a title increase and responsibility increase. And he said no to it. And then he had a conversation with me and he said, well, now he has to train the person who's going to take that role. And he was mad about it. He was annoyed that he now has to train that person. And I said to him, but you made the choice. You had the choice of taking that role. You were given the choice to at least have the higher
Title.
title to your name, but you chose not to. So you can't now complain that you have to now train this person because you declined that opportunity. So you also have to be careful what you wish for, and think clearly about what you want to do with the bit of your life that is left. Some of us have a long runway, some of us shorter. So
Yeah, that's a great example. And I'm just thinking of like in um, my own career, like how things shifted and they shifted so fast. And I always knew in the back of my mind, I always knew, my family was always invested in me being an accountant
right.
and then a manager and then a director. And
Yes.
yet at the same time, I knew that I was never happy.
Right.
So in the crash, then can you talk to the people that, as they're figuring out what they do want and what they do want to do, and now, shifting the focus, as a consultant with the name Mustard Seed, how they make that shift?
Yeah, I can't generalize on that because everybody's journey is different.
Sure.
I've had people, I've known people, coached people who've made an easy transition, and I've coached people who have had to make a transition kicking and screaming. Um, and those are the hard ones. And you were talking about your family, so I picked up on that. And sometimes the pressure, the peer pressure, family pressure, outside pressure on people is so strong that they lose themselves in the process. Because I'm projecting here, but I'm guessing you wanted to please your parents. You
Oh, sure.
wanted
Mhm.
to, it was almost an act of gratitude that they raised you and they wanted you to be in a professional role, which is sort of a rubber stamp on their ability as parents to raise a functioning adult.
Sure.
Um, and but that did not, and when we're young, sometimes we just don't know that we're going in the wrong direction.
Yeah.
um, and then to find that out later on in your life can be very hard, and you sometimes you do feel stuck, and that is one of the things that a coach is uniquely skilled to help with, is to get you unstuck from where you are, and help you figure out where you want to go. Because, we're all right here where we are, the accumulation of every single moment of our past. And tomorrow will just be that little bit different from what we were today because we've accumulated a couple more minutes. And if we don't do that, we do fade away, and we don't honor ourselves. And, that is, I think, what is the highest achievement of being human, is to be who God created you to be.
Beautiful. I think we can end right there. I mean, we went through like the whole thing. I mean, accountability, truth,
Yes,
and then picking up the pieces after you realize your truth.
yes, absolutely. Yes,
Well, thank
yes.
you so much for coming on today and for coming on my podcast. I would love to have you again. And
Thank you.
yeah, we're going to end it there. Thank you so
It
much
was
for
my
watching.
pleasure. Thank you, Crystal. I really enjoyed it. And you're so easy to talk to. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Have a great day, everyone. Bye
Bye
now.
bye, everybody.